The truth is that the LA riots were the most extreme physical terror I have ever experienced. Watching the recent remake of Dawn of the Dead last month brought it all back very sharply. The whole movie was just one giant flashback for me. Solstice, I was working as a security guard at the very high-class Rodeo Drive Boulevard when the riot started. I knew the verdict was coming down that day on the Rodney King police trial, and I had been trying to get ready the best way I knew how, by stocking up on food and buying ammunition. At that time, I was not a true survivalist, just a nascent embryonic paranoid. I knew enough of my American history to be able to predict what the blacks would do based on their previous behavior the decades beforehand if they did not approve of the verdict. I will say that 99.999% of the people I told to watch themselves before the riots were exactly as lame and feeble as we have often accused them of being here on Us Survivalist. The average person just has no idea of what a thin veneer civilization is until it cracks underfoot. I have to say honestly, neither did I before the riots. The thing rocked my world so violently that I've never really been the same person. I think my personality was altered as a result of the riots, and I have kind of been on another plane of awareness ever since. I never really came down off the adrenaline and returned to my sleepy-eyed sheeple state afterwards. Anyway, I had been talking to the celebrity slut that day known as Pia Zadora, a second-rate soft porn star who was rumored to have had sex with nearly every male and most females in Hollywood. She was asking for assistance with the lift down to the parking garage, which wasn't working. I radioed my supervisor to ask why the lifts were keyed off, and he came back over the radio sounding really weird and frightened. He said, "We're shutting everything down. I need you to make your security check right now and lock everything up. When you've done that, you are released to go home for the day. We are being relieved by some heavily armed private police who are being shuttled over from Beverly Hills." I asked what the problem was. Pia Zadora was staring at me like she thought this was some elaborate prank. "Listen, Cleve, some really strange stuff is happening. There are apparently spontaneous riots breaking out all over because of the Simi Valley verdict. Lock everything up and get yourself home immediately." I showed Pia Zadora the stairwell access, walked her down to the car, and then did my security checks as asked. I was supposed to meet my wife at Soup Plantation, a well-known restaurant down the road. I couldn't get her on the mobile. When I got there and parked, there was a queasy air amidst all of the shopping mall splendor, and people had a frightened look in their eyes that I had never, ever seen before. The easy listening music in the restaurant was so mundane it was hard to reconcile with the outside windows, which had fire engines, police cars, and people running on foot outside. I had planned to just eat quickly with my wife and go home because I was having trouble absorbing the idea that this thing was possibly even worse than I might have imagined. I thought South Central was so far off. The truth is, it was about 5 minutes down the road. People in the restaurant were watching the television reports, which were growing increasingly more feverish and seemed to just show one new burning building every 30 seconds. I was trying to keep a calm demeanor and went to explain to my wife what was happening. All of a sudden, a woman in the restaurant screamed. A guy dropped his tray and soup went everywhere. A man was standing in the doorway of Soup Plantation and wobbling on his feet. Blood was gushing out of his forehead, which had a nasty gash running right down to his ear. He yelled, "They're coming! They are next door in the mall! They're tearing everything to pieces!" You could have heard a pin drop. Then the restaurant exploded with activity, and everybody was crawling over the women and children, trying to get to their cars in the parking lot outside. I'm talking blind panic here, people smacking into each other like they could not give a thug less about any human in the world outside of themselves. A guy floored his Subaru and towed the toll gate right off the booth. Everybody else was following him out. The attendant was gone. There was cars hitting each other like bumper buggies at the carnival. Nobody seemed to care. Everybody wanted to get out to the street. When we made it out onto the highway, I got my first look at the skyline since I left Rodeo Drive. It looked like the fires of hell were consuming half of the city. My wife was crying. She thought it was the end of the world. If you want me to continue, I will tell you what happened when we got home and what that night was like.